Today what we're going to focus on is slope-intercept form, and this is a really powerful way of graphing different lines, and it's the way that most people graph lines when they need to. And so we're breaking this down into 2 days just to make sure that we get it down really well. So yesterday we were talking about slope, and we talked about how slope is actually represented as m in an equation. So if you remember, the slope of anything is the change in y over the change in x. So that formula hopefully looks pretty familiar to you. So that there is how fast something goes up. Just as a refresher, this is a positive slope because it goes up from left to right. This one here is a negative slope because it goes down from left to right. And then we also have, this is undefined because it goes straight up. And then lastly, this one here has a zero slope because it doesn't go up at all. So when it doesn't go up at all, there's no change in y, so it's 0 on top. When it doesn't change in the x-coordinate, there's a 0 on the bottom. That's why it's undefined. So just reviewing those terms first of all. So just to make sure that's clear, so m is the slope part of the equation. The equation y equals mx plus b is known as slope-intercept form of a line, where the equation of a line in this form can be easily identified by the slope m and the y-intercept b. Now remember, we had talked before about how the y-intercept of an equation is when x is equal to 0. So if I have y is equal to 3x plus 5, the y-intercept is going to be 5, because when x is 0, y is 5. That's the y-intercept. We did that when we were talking about intercepts a couple of days ago. So now the really important part of this is that when you write an equation, you can write an equation of a line that forms in this form and graph it much easier, since you can plot this point here very easily. Like I said here, 0, 5 would be the point for this graph that I would immediately start with, because when x is 0, y is 5. And then I can identify a second point by applying the rise over run as indicated by the slope. We're going to give you an example of that now. So if you look up here, we've got this slope and y-intercept is what we're looking for in this equation right here. So it is already in that form, y equals mx plus b. So we're looking for what the slope is. That's going to be the number in front of the x when the line is in this form. So the slope is just going to be 5. And then the y-intercept is going to be this extra part here. It's going to be, so b is going to equal to negative 12. Now, the second one here is a little bit harder because the second one is not in that y equals mx plus b form. So we're going to have to rearrange it a bit to make it so it is. And we're going to practice this today. That's part of the reason why we're only doing this part today, and then we're going to do the rest of the lesson tomorrow. So what I'm going to do is I need to end up with the y by itself. So I'm going to go ahead and subtract 8x from both sides. When I do that, what I'm left with is negative 3y is equal to, I'm going to put the minus 8x in front so it can be in that y equals mx plus b form, and plus 2. So now the final part of this is that I need to divide by negative 3, both sides by negative 3. And I've got to divide everything by negative 3 on both sides. So I'm going to divide negative 3 by negative 3, that's 1, so now I just am left with y. Negative 8 divided by negative 3, that's just going to be 8 over 3. I still have that x there. And 2 divided by negative 3 is going to be the same as negative 2/3. It would be 2 over negative 3, which is the same as negative 2/3. So now I've got this format that's correct. I've got my slope, because it looks like this. It's in slope-intercept form. My slope is going to be 8/3. This is really the hardest part of this line form. And the y-intercept is negative 2/3. So the b part is negative 2/3. So on the bottom here, these are 2 more things to try. I'm going to do one of them, and you should try the other one yourself. I will write down the answer for both of them. So I'm going to actually, you know what? Try this one right now, and then pause the video, see if you can figure it out, and then we'll come back in just a second. So I hope you came up with this answer down here in the correct line form and slope-intercept form. It's going to be y equals 10x plus 14. Because here I subtracted 10x first, and then I multiplied by negative 1 because I don't want negative y. And then when I change everything around, it's going to be y equals 10x plus 14. So try this one as well. Pause the video here, and then we'll come back in just a minute. So that's what that one's going to look like. I'm going to subtract 4x from both sides. That moves the 4x over, and then I'm going to divide both sides by 7. So that's the form it's going to look like there. Negative 4/7 for m and negative 3/7 for b. So one of the things that's really cool about graphing with y-intercept, slope-intercept form, is this idea that you just really have to graph one point and then you can use slope to figure out the next point. So if you look here, this first one here, it's already in slope-intercept form. The y equals mx plus b form. That means the y-intercept when x is 0, y is going to be 1. So I can put down that point right there. The next part is I'm going to figure out what the slope is. And the slope here, remember, it says just a negative in front of the x. That means we could write it as negative 1. If we write it as a fraction, it would be negative 1 over 1. And what that means is it is a negative slope, so it's going to go like downhill. But it means every time you go 1 to the right, it's going to go down 1. So 1 to the right and down 1. 1 to the right and down 1. 1 to the right and down 1. And so on until you get this nice, neat line here. And it's just about going down 1 and over 1. Down 1 and over 1. So that's how it works when you have that slope-intercept form that you can do really quickly. This one here, a little bit harder, but not much. What's the y-intercept here? There's nothing listed there. But if we wanted to, we could put it down. It would just be plus. I meant to put plus 0 down there. So I could write it as that, and then my y-intercept when x is 0, y is 0, so it's going to go right there. This 4, if I want to write it as a fraction, it would be 4 over 1. What that means is it's going to be a positive slope, so it's going to go up from left to right. And it's going to go up 4 over 1, so up 1, 2, 3, 4, and over 1. Up 1, 2, 3, 4, and over 1. And so you got this nice line here. Let me draw it nice and neatly, or try to. And hopefully you can draw a neater line than I can. But so it's going to be connecting those dots up 4 over 1, up 4 over 1. The last one here, I have to rearrange a bit. When I rearrange it, what I'm going to be left with, that's what we were working on in the last one. So I'm just going to figure out that equation now. So just to walk you through the steps here, because this we're going to do a lot of, I subtracted 3x from both sides to move the x's over. Then I divided both sides by -2. And remember, -3 over -2 is the same as 3/2. 6 divided by -2 is -3, or -3. So now I've got my y-intercept form, or slope-intercept form. And so I'm going to start off at 0. When x is 0, y is -3. So it's right there. In this case here, it's a positive slope. So it's going to go up. So it's going to up 3, because 3 is on the top. 1, 2, 3, and over 2. Up 3, 1, 2, 3, over 2. And so now I've got my points, and I can just draw a nice line there. And that's the end. So it's all about putting the line in the right format, and then after you do that, then identifying the y-intercept, and then using slope to plot the next point, and the point after that, and however many points you want to plot.